Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Attract and Stand Out podcast. I'm your host, Darlene Holly, and I am so excited because I have with me Amy Kemp. Thank you so much for being here with me. I'm excited to hear your story and hear all about your new book and all things habits and all the amazing things that you're doing in the world. So, welcome, Amy, to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Darlene.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. Before we dive too far in, I would love just to hear a little bit about you. Can you tell us a little bit how you came to start your business, how you came into the work that you're doing?
Sure. It's funny. I was playing pickleball yesterday and someone asked me what I did. I'm kind of playing with a different group of people sometimes now. And I said, well, I accidentally started a business 7 years ago that grew beyond what I ever imagined it would be. But I'll back up a little bit further. I would say I originally was a teacher, and I still have some deep roots in loving to teach and work with people and have them experience ahas. But originally, I taught high school English, my very first professional foray, which I did for 5 years and then started a small business in sales on the side that grew over 20 years to me leading the number one team of sales force members in this particular company for about 20 years. And so I thought that's what I would do forever, and sort of had an itch about 7 years ago to start working with women outside of the context of that business. And I don't know if you've ever had this happen, but I kept everywhere I would go. It was like I would have lunch with a friend, and then she would say, "Oh, you should really do that." I would listen to a podcast, and it would say, "You should take action on the thing that's kind of niggling in your mind." And it was just this repeated message that I was supposed to work with women outside, in a different context. And then I kept having conversations with women that I knew around themes of isolation, exhaustion, being ambitious, and yet also deeply committed to their families. And there was this shared experience where I thought if I could gather these women together, that something magical could happen. If they knew each other, they could serve each other, and it would be so mutually beneficial. So what happened was I went to Utah. I had worked with a coach who uses the Habit Finder assessment tool that I use now years before then. And I knew he lived in Salt Lake City. So I was there for a speaking and engagement. And I said, I'm going to be in town. Let's have dinner. So we did. And I started telling him, I'm having this repeated message that I'm supposed to work with. I don't know what I'm supposed to do, but I keep hearing this
Yeah.
message. And he said, well, we're starting training for new Habit Finder coaches on Monday. And this was a Thursday night. And it was so crazy. I'd never thought about being a coach. I'd never thought about being certified to use that tool. I mean, it was so outside of my realm of even my wildest dreams. And yet it felt so in alignment with all I'd been hearing. And so went home and talked it over with my husband, Ryan, who said, every time we've invested in you, it's been worth it. Go for it. So did an extensive training process. And now currently, for the last 7 years, I accidentally started a new company that grew really fast. Have been working with people using this tool in small groups and one-on-one engagements. So that's where I am now. And then just published my first book in February. So that's been the newest professional excitement. So
Very cool. I love when we see, like, I like to call them like breadcrumbs
yeah.
that are kind of just scattered out there in the world. And all of a sudden we start following them and we're like, they lead us to such like beautiful places where we can really enrich our own selves, but also like the people we get to connect with and support during that process. And I love what you said too, like about how your husband said, like every time we invest in you, like amazing things happen. So like congrats for
Good.
having like that type of relationship where you're really able to shine because there's so many people that believe in the work that you're going to do and the impacts that you're going to make in the world. That's huge.
It's so significant, and I recognize so rare. And I'm so grateful for it without question. Yeah. I also think that this experience, I tease that it was an accidental business. I think a better way to phrase it is that I just allowed it to unfold. I didn't really have, and I still don't know where it's going, but I have been really obedient to the next step, the next inspired idea, and this energy of just kind of, it feels like discovery. It feels like, um, that's how I describe it. It's like unfolding a gift where I just keep taking another layer off and discovering the next step that I'm going to take. And that's been really beautiful. That's a very different energy than the energy with which I built my first business. And so it's been a significant life change for me, that shift in how I'm creating.
Yeah. I've had my business now for 17, it'll be 17 years when this episode airs. So a month, we're in July technically when we're filming, but when this gets released, like late August, early September, I'll have celebrated my 17th year in business. And I never know where the journey is taking me. I feel like it's a journey, not a destination. Like I feel like a lot of people talk about how like, oh, you start a business and like you're gonna do this thing and like you're done. But I've never experienced that. Like I've always shifted and grown and developed and learned something new. And like how I show up to coach my clients and how I talk about things has shifted dramatically, I would say, over the 17 years. Like who I was 17 years ago when I started this business versus who I am today, totally like night and day. Like I wouldn't even recognize like 17 years ago, Darlene, versus like how I show up now. And so there's like so much beauty that happens like as we evolve, as we, whether it's pivot or change, or just sometimes I think it's just how we see things like, through that different lens. I know for myself, like I'll read a book that I haven't read in like 5 or 10 years, and I pull different things from it than I did the time before because I've changed. I'm not who I used to be. Like we're constantly growing and learning and developing. And so I love that you're seeing like all the things and like we don't know where we're going. Who knows what's
Mm-mm.
gonna happen tomorrow, let alone 5 or 10 years from now.
I'm kind of starting to think that the point is actually what you become in the process.
Mhm. Yeah.
What you're describing, right? The process of 17 years, which, by the way, congratulations. That's no small feat. Entrepreneurship is a wild ride. So to have been doing it for that long is so like, wow, amazing.
Yeah.
But I also would say it's like, it changes you, it refines you, it works things out of you because of all of the different things you experience. And I do kind of wonder at this point in my career if that isn't the point.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure entrepreneurship is just like a label for self-development and
Yeah.
self-improvement.
You think you're starting a
Yeah.
business.
Really, I'm just developing myself into
Mhm.
the next like evolution of who I
Really
am.
great.
And
That's very
like when you said that, like I always joke that like entrepreneurship is kind of like Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. It's a ride at Disneyland. I don't know if you've been to Disneyland, but it's like a wild ride. I'm like, sometimes that's life. Like just like when you think you know where you're going, all of a sudden you're spinning around or doing something different. And so it keeps us on our toes. It definitely keeps me young between the kids and the business.
Yeah, I was talking to a client yesterday, actually, and so she worked in a very traditional space for 30 years and then has retired and started a business doing consulting in that traditional space.
Yeah.
And she told me that she found herself at night searching through the page where you look for jobs back in the traditional field. And she said, I don't want to go back to a traditional role, but I keep finding myself. And so we were kind of digging in there and realized, oh, it's because this entrepreneurial space is calling her to a higher place. It's challenging her in new ways. It's causing her to have to do work that she wouldn't have to if she could just retreat back to the place where she knew what she was doing and felt really comfortable and safe and secure. And so we just talked about, rather than feeling bad about that, just taking some time to acknowledge how she was feeling, that it's scary being an entrepreneur and that there's rejection and there's the fear of failure and it's different than if you know a paycheck's coming every 2 weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like there's the fear of failure, but there's also the fear of success. Like, what if
Oh,
I do make it? Like, what if I change the world and I make an impact, like the level of responsibility that we can put on our shoulders in those
Yep.
moments is huge.
Yep. Mhm.
I'd love to hear a little bit about like the habit, like I know you talk a lot about habits, like walk me through a little bit of what that looks like as you support your clients and what type of clients really can benefit from, I mean, habits are great for all of us, but like who's like your person?
Yeah. So, first of all, I think it's really important. The work I do is on habits of thinking. So, our brain has a small part of it that's conscious when we're awake and functioning and having a conversation. But the majority of what's happening in our brains is underneath the surface in the subconscious mind. And so we have this very, very robust network of pathways that are running all the time. And a lot of it's keeping us alive. And we should be really grateful for it. But some of those patterns of thinking are not serving us and we are unaware of them. And so the tool that I use, the habit finder, basically takes a picture of what's happening at the subconscious level in your mind and allows you to kind of see where areas of risk are. So unlike a tool where it's telling you your strengths or pattern, personality, style, or characteristics, this is not that. This is showing you right now your brain is kind of falling into this groove over and over and over again. And so I'll give you an example. This is a conversation I had yesterday with a different client who is transitioning to a new role that's more of a sales type of a role. And the sales cycle for this particular role is very long. And so we were talking about what the risks are for this client moving into this role. And she said, it's that I've closed the deal in my head. I'm so far ahead. I've raced ahead to fantasy, but there are still a ton of little steps that need to be taken. And or I've closed it and then something happens and it gets off track and it doesn't happen. And then I feel very disappointed and discouraged. And so then I think I did something wrong or I'm not cut out for this role. So our conversation, the habit of thinking is that her brain wants to go to a fantastical place where everything happens perfectly and easily and there's no road bumps in the road and all the people get along and there's no financing issues and right.
It's like a
But
Cinderella love story.
which again, in my moments of where I just want to be entertained, sometimes I really love that, right? I really want there to be a happy ending, but in real life, if our brains get out ahead of us, it can lead to a lot of disappointment and discouragement, and then also just a lot of hits on our self-esteem.
Mm.
So a lot of our work is going to be focused on how do we keep her present in today, doing the millimeters of creation, the tiniest little send this email, make this phone call, have this conversation, take action on this inspired idea, and not only do those things, but love them. Actually enjoy those millimeters and fall in love with those millimeters and find that to be the point. Now, the outcomes will come when they come,
Yeah,
but if we can stay in the present, then the creation tends to happen instead of staying in the fantasy, which is out there and not really real.
yeah.
So that's just an example. These habits of thinking, she's not aware she's doing that. She's doing that on purpose. Her brain just skips ahead because it's got a groove there.
Yeah.
So,
Well, it's so easy sometimes too to think like big picture. Like we're like that fantasy stage. Like we want to like we know where we want to go, we know where we want to get. Like we want to visualize what that looks like and know what it's gonna like taste like or look like or be like when we get there. But I love that you really focus on like the little micro steps to getting there because that's where the magic happens. Like sometimes we can, focus too much on the past and that can hold us back because we're staying stuck and, past traumas or past situations or past expectations. And then other times, like we're too far ahead of ourselves in like that fantasy land. So I think it's important. Like we take those big, I like to think of it as like the big picture, but then we break it down into those baby bite-sized pieces. Like how do we actually get to where we're going and do the steps that will get us where we need to be so we can make the change. We can get the next client. We can, have the fantasy.
totally. And I think conversely, we can go to catastrophe where our brain dips into this potential negative outcome or bad situation that could happen. I tell this story in my book under the principle, if you're going to make up a story, you might as well make up a good one.
Love it.
And I had a conversation with a prospective client. He was very interested in moving forward. We had a really clear connection in our exploratory call. I felt really great that it was going to be a yes, but he wanted to talk to his wife before giving me a final answer. I got busy. I didn't hear from him for a couple of days. Then I sent an email and I still didn't hear. And at this point, I started to kind of go to catastrophe. Was I misreading him? Did I come across weird in the call? Was he not really interested and he was lying to me? Did he think this was weird? There were just all these
Yeah.
stories that started percolating in my head. Well, it turns out a couple of days later, I had got an email back from him, and he said, it basically said, I found this email in the drafts of my email. I thought I had sent it. I wondered why I hadn't heard back from you. And it was like, we're a definite yes, let's go do this. Right. Well, so as I reflected on the story, on what happened, I realized, oh, my brain going to this catastrophic outcome of him not wanting to move forward and all of this robbed me of confidence. It robbed me of presence in the days in between when I was showing up for my current clients, when I was talking to other prospective clients. And it was all based on a story that wasn't even true.
Yeah.
And so, can we not give power to the story that could or could not be true, and or just make up a great story that maybe the email's in his drafts and he forgot to send it, which actually is what happened, right? I mean, if you're going to make up a story, you might as well make up a good one that serves you and gives you more confidence, because it's just as likely to be true as the other outcome.
Mhm. And how it shifts our thought process in those moments as well, because it
Yeah.
does, like you're right, when we make up a story about one situation and we're still showing up and doing the work and making new contacts, like that story's playing kind of like at a cinema, like at a movie theater, right? It's running in the back behind us the whole time. So it impacts the next conversation you have. I like to think of like it's like the inner critic piece of us.
Yeah.
It's telling us either I've got this, I'm gonna rock it, like I'm gonna get this client, I'm successful, I'm amazing, or it's also the opposite side. Like, who am I to do this work? Like nobody wants to work with me. Like I thought that guy was ready to work, and obviously I read every signal wrong. Like, why am I even in this space? Like, so that inner critic can um lift us up can tear us down so quickly when we allow it to. And I think that piece of like you said it so brilliantly, like with the stories we tell ourselves, because that's something I talk a lot with my clients too. Like we can tell ourselves all kinds of stories. Like why are we telling the bad stories? Why are we like the victim, the villain? Like why can't
Yeah.
we be like the positive side of it and like looking into like what's really going on and like trusting ourselves that like we did everything, even if they did say no, right? That isn't, it's not a reflection, of Amy or Darlene or of us as individuals. Like they're saying no to the product or the service, or it's not a good fit for right now. And so, like, I talk a lot about that with my clients. Like, they're not saying no to you. Like I know I had to separate like Darlene Holly as a person and then Darlene Holly as, a leadership and business coach. And if somebody says no, it's not a good fit, it's not like Darlene that they're saying no.
Yeah.
It's my program, Attract and Stand Out, or me to come in and lead a communication training with their team and different pieces like that. And I think it's important. Like I don't think we talk about this enough in the business world. We take so much of it personal, and it's really not. I mean, everyone, I mean, sometimes it could be like there could be like a personality conflict or different things, but for 9 out of 10 times, it's just not a good fit. And now, or we didn't give enough information, we didn't overcome the objective, we didn't, answer
Yeah.
all the questions they had in those moments.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And when our feeling of value is attached to that yes or no or that outcome, it's even more dangerous. There's a connection there of like, I will write the word value on one hand and performance on the other. And if your feeling of value is attached to your performance, it's like your hands are clasped together in sort of a prayer posture. But when your hands are clasped together, you can't get your hands into the clay that is sitting in front of you in a lump that you're supposed to mold and shape with whatever tools you use, whatever you're creating, right? But so when we separate value from performance, our hands are free and we can use them to dig into our clay and to mold it and to play around with it and try different things, because the risk isn't there that we're gonna but that's a lot tied also to just your feeling of self-worth and self-esteem. That's a deeper healing work, but it's very important, especially in entrepreneurial spaces.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
I know you have a new book. I see you. Can you
Yes.
tell us a little bit about what the book's about?
Mhm. Yeah. I think it's important to know who the book is for, because that will tell you what it's about. So I wrote this book for women. I actually was inspired. The title was inspired by a conversation I had with a local community leader who I had just met at an event and invited her for a cup of coffee, literally just because I thought she was cool when I met her.
Yeah.
And so we talked for an hour, and toward the end of the conversation, she said kind of brusquely to me, why did you invite me here today? And I said the first thing that came into my head, because I see you. And she put her head in her hands and wept in this coffee shop. And this is someone who sits at really important tables in our community. She has a big job, running her family like a beast. She is seen everywhere,
Yeah.
but nobody really sees her experience.
Mm.
And I wrote this book for those women who have done some stuff. They've accomplished some things. They're ambitious. They want to have more impact, more influence, more income, and yet they're exhausted by the demands of their work and their lives outside of work. And there's this crossroads where you just can't work any more or any harder. And so the core message of the book is that you can't outwork your thought habits. Comes a point where you've got to learn to think differently and to show up differently in order to move forward. And that's really who I wrote the book for.
So beautiful. And how beautiful that you were able to see her in that moment, because I know so many women don't feel seen. They don't feel like they're valued, or that the work that they're doing like is leading anywhere. And sometimes just to tell someone like that you see them and you see the efforts and the even like the small little baby details that are overlooked on a constant, like that's pretty powerful. So thank you for every woman. Like we all deserve and need to be seen.
It's real. And just to know what it takes to, at the same time, be taking a very tiny, tiny, tiny baby all the way up to your oldest is 28, mine is 21, right? What that takes from you to do in the way that I know you and I want to, right? Combined with managing this ambitious desire to grow something that is outside of that family unit also. There's something about that experience that it's possible, but there's a tension there that exists. And I was on a call yesterday. I'm still processing through how to think about it. But it was basically men telling a woman she had just had a baby, like that she needed to show up more professionally. I wanted to say, like, you take a baby off of your breast and then try to find clothes that fit your body that's just been changed so much, and then show up at a networking event to meet with someone who's going to bring in a big account. And you try to do that and you tell me how easy that is to
How it
do, right?
goes. Yeah. Good luck.
I'm just processing through how to, even what the answer is to that. because again, she fiercely loves this baby and also wants to really succeed in her career
Yeah.
and is not being seen by those who are guiding her. And so it's that experience that we've all had if you've walked that road at all, I think, as well, balancing all of the unpaid labor in our lives with the paid labor. So
Yeah. You you hit on something that I was just having a conversation with earlier this week. I was actually at my therapy appointment. We were talking about, so my background before I started my business was I was in retail management, and I was a single mom with my oldest son, my 28-year-old. He was probably like 4 or 5 when I got promoted into leadership inside of the retail organization. And I had a huge, and this came up this week, like we were that internal battle of like how to be an amazing, like I was career focused. I wanted to make good money so I could provide for my son and myself. I was a single mom. And there was so much pressure to like be at work and, wear this hat of like professionalism and like not let like, the fact that I had a child slow me down, or like that I had to get home at the end of the day. I'm like a single parent. I was working 60, 70, 80 hours a week sometimes. And I really dove into like the expectations haven't shifted much over the past 20, I guess like 23 years. If I think back to when he was probably like 4 or 5 when I got into leadership. And I'm like, some of those same expectations that really put a lot of pressure on me as a young adult trying to provide for my son and my family and the decisions I was trying to make, for my career, as well as, I felt like I was back then. I used to say I was looking for balance. Like I just wanted like that perfect teeter totter of like, I want to be a good career person. I wanted to be a great mom and I wanted everything to be perfect, right? Like I've learned over the years that I looked for harmony and there was definitely no perfect balance. It was like a wild teeter totter ride. And some days it was more mom, some days it was more career. But like the pressure I put on myself back in those days to get it right and to like try to show up in those ways, like the fact that we're still talking about these things 23 plus years later, like it's like, when does it change? Like that no woman should feel like she has to like do something really like different if she's nursing her baby or she's showing up as a parent. Like we can do both. Like it's okay. You can still be a successful woman doing both. There doesn't have to be an and or like a but or anything else in that
there is,
sentence.
but we've got to change some structural things like systems that are in place also, right? There's a whole chapter about this in my book about unpaid labor
Mhm.
and even structures like right now, my son is going to a camp at the high school, right? It's like an athletic camp
Yeah.
and it runs from 12:30 to 1:45. Well, how are you supposed to do that when you have a job? Like,
Yeah.
how are you supposed to get your child to preschool that runs from 9 to 11,
Mhm.
right?
Impossible. Yeah.
Impossible. And then also the unpaid labor when women entered the workforce, which now we know that in 75 probably more percent of the homes, women are outside of the home working or at least working from home, providing income, right? Uh, we didn't give up any of the unpaid labor. And we continued to do all of the laundry and the cooking and the shopping and the preparing for parties and the my son's leaving for college. I'm the one who's got the list of things that he needs and making sure that we're ordering those. And then what are we having for supper tonight? There's Italian beef in the crock pot. And what about, oh, this one's shoes don't fit anymore. And I've got to, so again, I think there are a lot of the things that I do that are unpaid labor that I want to do.
Yeah.
They are vital to thriving families and communities. I'm not suggesting they're not without value. What I'm saying is, if you're doing all of that, there's a survey in the book where you figure out how many hours a week you're doing of unpaid labor. And for most women, it's averaging around 40 hours,
Mhm. Oh yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And so if you're not selling as many widgets as your coworker who has a stay-at-home wife, for example, right?
Hmm.
There might be a reason. I mean,
Yeah.
again, that's not to say that there's something wrong with you. And that's what I think happens then. Women think, oh, or how about this? Every networking event, let's say a chamber event, happens in our community at 7 o'clock in the morning or at 4 to 5 p.m. Well, Those are the two worst possible times for a mom
Yes.
to be able to leave there's no way that a mom can get someone on the bus and then get there and look presentable and right. I mean,
Literally
it's
just had that exact conversation yesterday with a girlfriend I met for lunch. We both do very similar work in the community. We partner really well. We're really like business besties like in the community, and like we really support each other. And I was talking about, because I live in like the suburbs between LA and San Diego, and there's not a lot of great networking right here that real like it's the same type thing as like events, are either they're golf tournaments first thing in the morning, or they're an evening mixer, or it's like they do ribbon cuttings even for a lot of the events, like right when kids are getting out of school. And I'm like, they don't make it conducive for the women that they're trying to support in the community. They say they want to make it a safe
yes.
space.
Well,
They
they
The
say that,
actions
but then
don't
they're not
show up.
changing any of the structural things that are
Yes,
keeping them from being there.
exactly.
Yes. And contributing at high levels. And again, as a business owner, I also can understand that you do need people to be there when your business is
Yeah,
open and when it closes. I do understand there's another side, and I have women who own businesses who struggle with that as well, right?
yeah,
I've got to hold these women who I know have a newborn accountable because I still need them to produce so the business can stay open.
yeah.
There is other side. So I don't want to feel like critical that, but there are just some overall structures that are in place that are keeping us stuck in kind of this circular
Yeah.
pattern that need to be addressed at larger levels. And again, I'm one person. What I'm trying to do is to help women understand that there's nothing wrong with you.
Yes.
There's nothing wrong with you. You are absolutely actually running circles around the person who may on the scoreboard be producing more than you. You just have another full-time job you're doing as well that you're
Yeah.
not getting paid for. And so how do we more equally share that unpaid labor within our family structures and or hire people to help with some of it? There's just many, many mindsets that I dig into in the book around that are really interesting.
And it takes a village. Like
It
that's
does.
definitely a lesson that I've learned time and time again. Like when I try to carry it on my own,
Yep.
it doesn't work out as well. But when I like get the courage or like find the voice in those
Yep.
moments and I ask for help, or I raise my hand and say like, hey, we have to make some changes. Like, how do we make this work for everybody? And like we're one person, but one person can like we start like if ever like I talk a lot with my clients about using their voice and asking for what they want, and just being brave enough to like raise their hand and grab the microphone and share like that one little piece can be
Mhm.
all it takes to like start that ripple effect out into the universe. And so like how do we continue to pass the microphone? How do we continue to start the conversation? That's all we can
Yep.
do. But that's gonna get changed. And it may not, it still could be 20 years from now, but we're starting the process. Like everything I do now, I'm like, my daughter is gonna carry that torch. Like how can
Totally.
I set her up just to have it a little bit easier,
Totally.
a little better?
Here's here's the perfect example you're talking about too, because what I find is a lot of times it's the women holding the women back as well. So for example, my mom always worked outside of the home, and we always had a cleaning lady. So when I became an adult, this is so funny. I had like a tiny little house, and I started my second business for the sole purpose of paying someone to clean my house because I really did not want to do that, right? But I never thought twice about it. I interviewed so many women for the book who were so embarrassed that people might find out that they had someone come and help them clean their house or do their laundry or take care of their errands or iron their clothes. They just didn't they felt like that was shameful.
Yeah.
And I'm saying my friend Erica owns a company. They clean 120 houses so that she can have a flexible schedule. The people who do that work have a flexible schedule. And then the women who are hiring them don't have to do all of that work all weekend after they've just worked all week long. And so it's a win-win-win. We should be celebrating that. Everyone should be like, yay, you got someone to clean your house.
Yes.
Like that is so significant for you. And why should you be working full time and then coming home and working full time?
Yeah.
Right? But what else is you have to make enough money to be able to pay that person, but you can't make enough until you've freed up that energy. So it's like
Yeah,
this cycle you get
yeah,
in that some point you just have to say, I'm taking the chance, I'm going to do it, get some help,
yeah,
and then create the income.
yeah, absolutely. And it's one of those
Anyhow,
conversations we need to continue having because
oh,
I hear
I
it
just
too.
get
Like,
so fired up about it.
uh-huh. And some people are like, why would you do that? Like, why would you have a cleaning person? Like, why not? Like, I
Right.
don't like there's nothing like I don't need to clean my own toilet. It's okay.
Yeah. But as women, we are conditioned that
Oh
that's
yeah.
our job.
Oh,
And if we're
absolutely.
not doing, and if it's not clean, then there's something wrong with you. And if you can't manage to clean it and work 60 hours a week and take care of your kids and get them to all their things, then there's something wrong with you. And I'm just like, men would never even try that. They would say that's ridiculous. Why would I
Mhm.
do
Yeah.
that?
Like we'll hire
Right?
someone for that. We'll outsource.
Totally. And but men won't hire it if you're going to do it for free. That's the other thing.
Absolutely. And it's the same thing with our businesses. Like I,
Yes.
as a business coach, like almost most of my clients come in as solopreneurs. Sometimes they have a couple of employees. Sometimes like we get them in a position during our work together, if depending on like if they want to have like how they want their business structured and what the framework is for it. Like sometimes like just hiring that first virtual assistant feels like torture to them. And then once they do it and we get them in a
Oh,
situation where even if it's 5 hours a week where somebody is taking over some of those little responsibilities, it's like the CEO hat shifts completely. Like they're able to see things from a different light. They're able to show up better on their sales calls when they're out networking in their community, when they're speaking on a stage, because they're not doing the little teeny, like tedious steps of their business, which are important. And they should know how to.
yes.
I'm a big fan of like, I want to know how to do it just in case something doesn't work out down the road. Like, I don't ever want to be in a situation where, I train somebody else or somebody else just does it for me and I don't know what the process is. Like I love to like know a little bit about what's going on. I like to have done it once or twice, but I want to teach my team to do it so that they can take it over and they can make it their own and they can have that support because it frees me up so much. And so when I get my clients to like bring that first virtual assistant or one of my clients right now, like she's having massive growth in her business. We've just hired, she had like, I think it was a year and a half ago, we hired her first virtual assistant. She's got two on staff employees now working in her location, helping support our business. And we're getting it to that place where she's really going to be able to scale it to the next level. And it's scary. Like I can feel like, the tension of now she's responsible for not just her own livelihood. There's three other people that she's responsible for. And it's
And
so powerful to see her shift through that process.
who does she have to believe she is
Mhm.
to be that important that she actually has all those people
Yeah,
taking care of things for her, right? There's this element of like, I have to understand my value. She has to understand her value, that her value is in doing these specific things and not everything. But
yeah,
that you have to understand, that's a whole like thing, right?
yeah.
There's so much to learn there in that space. It's so important for women, especially.
And women are so prone to taking care of everything.
Oh,
We're really good at all the things that you just listed a little while ago, like the shoe shopping and the back to school, like we're in like summertime, so like back to school shopping and all those different pieces are coming up. I'm like, we don't have to be the only ones that do it. There's lots of ways we can get support and get those things done. Yet we take it on for ourselves. Like we feel like
no.
we want to make sure all these things are done. Like, how do we bring other people into the conversation? How do we even, have like I've been working with my kids, like, what do you actually need? Not what do you want? I'm like, what do you actually need this back to school season? How are you like where like we're so used to like, oh, well, we have to get a new pair of shoes or we have to get like a whole new outfits and all these different things. And I'm like, technically, we've been buying stuff all summer long. Like, it's not like you're
Different.
deprived. Like, I feel
Yeah.
like back to school, I don't know. I'm trying to think back when I was a kid. Like we didn't do a ton of shopping during the year, so we did do like a big bulk at like the back to
Totally.
school.
And
But
you'd
I don't
have to
feel like
go to the store too, remember? Like
yeah.
you'd have to actually go make a trip to the store so then you got all your stuff at once. This is a different world that we
Yeah.
live
And
in
now it
now.
just shows up on my doorstep in a box, and I'm like, who ordered this?
Right. Yes.
So
I
yeah.
have a funny story, just really quick. My son, who's leaving for college, we were talking about what he needed. And so I said, well, we're going to have to get you some sheets because the beds are longer for
Oh
the
yeah, the
dorm.
extra large
Yeah.
long twins.
He's like, Mom, I mean, sheets, that's a little extra. It's like, Anthony, yes, you're sleeping with sheets on your bed. That's not extra.
Yeah, that's just normal.
Boys. Yeah, he's like, well, I'm like, what are you gonna sleep on? I'll just put the blanket down, and I'm like,
Oh
oh,
my
brother,
gosh.
are you?
Yeah,
So
how dare you torture him with the comfort of like
oh,
400 count sheets, mom?
yeah, my daughter conversely had like a Pinterest board with a theme for her decor of her dorm
Oh
room her
yes.
freshman year.
As a mom that moved her son into college last year, his room versus the girls' rooms, and because he was in a co-dorm floor, the girls like they went all out. They had lights, twinkle
Oh,
lights hanging, and like nets and like canopies over their beds. And I'm like, his room was like we did buy sheets. Like, I hope your son's okay with hearing that. But like we bought him sheets and blankets, and like I got him, some like light cooking stuff. So if he wanted to go downstairs and make top ramen or like whatever they make in college these days, when it's like quick grab and go. But I was like, it was pretty basic. But I was like, those girls, I'm like, their parents were lugging
oh,
up like double the amount of items than I brought.
yep, absolutely. Yes, it's
So
great.
I love
Mm.
it. So yeah, there's just so many things that, as families, like that we're responsible for. Like, how do we keep showing up as amazing women? How do we balance and not even balance? Because, like I said, I don't really love that word, but like, how do we find that harmony for taking care of our family, taking care of our business, creating the right types of habits to support those systems to really like keep using our voice and keep asking for what we need and being, brave enough to like grab the microphone or ask for help or, really look internal, like what changes can I make for myself so that this, we can break those generational habits. Like I look a lot at that one. Like, how do I change the things that I didn't like from my childhood and like really like cut the cord with this generation and have it be so much different for my kids. And so I know could open up a whole can of worms.
How do we steward our unique gifts, right?
Yeah.
I use these scrolls with my clients, but one of them says, you are rare and there is value in all rarity. Therefore, you are valuable. Women who have gifts in leadership or who have brilliant business minds or who are strategic and can create in, like, let's say a business realm, are rare, and there is value in all rarity. Therefore you are valuable, but you've got to understand that value and rareness to be able to then make choices that say, okay, if only I can do this, then I've got to have someone else help me with this that a lot of people can do. I've got to understand my value, my uniqueness, in order to even be able to give myself permission to let people help me. And that's really important.
Absolutely.
Mm.
All right. Well, I want to keep talking, but I'm going to wrap us up. I'm going to bring us to rapid fire questions. I just have a few questions for you just so we can get to know you a little bit better. When Amy needs to reflect, recharge, and reset, like what's your happy space? Like what is it you like to do to really like reconnect with yourself?
I have this yard full of flowers, and I really love to get out there and dig in the dirt. I also play a lot of pickleball, which is super fun. And then the third thing is yoga. Those are my three main uh, turn off my brain, recharge, and connect.
Yeah, I love it. If I could buy you a plane ticket anywhere in the world today, where would you go and why?
Oh, I have such a long bucket list, but I would say probably the next, well, one thing we've been talking about as a new dream, there's a place called Bear Lake in Utah. We took our kids there. We've been there twice, three times. We don't usually go back places, but for whatever reason, it feels like home to me. It's in the mountains. It's this beautiful turquoise lake. So I probably would say Bear Lake
Okay.
because Something about it speaks to my soul.
Love it.
It's really,
When you think about the legacy you want to leave, like as part of your business or for your kids, like what do you want that to look like?
Mm. I want to make sure that all of the choices I'm making around growing a business, I want to create a life, not just a business. And my business is a part of that life. And I want it to be beast mode awesome. I want it to be successful and grow and be abundant. But it is just a part of the whole picture. I also want to give deeply to places that I feel strongly about, or causes about which I feel strongly. I want to invest deeply in my family and have a very strong unit that is supporting each other. So I think that the legacy I want to leave is that all decisions weren't made just about moving forward this one lane of my life, but that the decisions were made about the wholeness of life.
Mm, love that. And in honor of the name of the podcast, Attract and Stand Out, what does attract and stand out mean to you?
I'm different than most spaces in which I've worked. I tend to be really introverted, reflective, analytical, kind of strategic and consistent and very calm. I used to feel out of place or as if that didn't belong or if there was something off with me. And I've learned that actually attract people are attracted to me when I'm just me. That it's not about me doing something that I'm not. It's actually about me becoming more of who I am that attracts people to me. And as long as I stay true to serving people in the spaces where those gifts align, I never have to worry about where the next client's coming from, where the next account's coming. Like I don't have to worry.
Yeah,
If I do that work, I will always attract what I need.
yeah, I love that. Lovely.
Mm.
Well, Amy, thank you so much for being on the podcast. It's been an absolute joy to chat with you and connect. And I definitely had more questions, so we'll have to continue the conversation. TBD, another date. But I know people are going to want to hear more about you and learn about the habit assessment and different things like that. Can you tell us where to find you and how they can access that?
Yeah. So the Habit Finder assessment is a free tool that you can take at any time. It takes about 5 minutes. It is best to take it from a computer. You can do it from your phone or tablet, but it's a little bit harder to navigate. You can find everything at amykemp.com. My name is really short and easy to spell, so it's AMYKEMP.com. There's also on the website a link all about the book. You can download it. I read it on Audible, so it's my book, my voice reading the book. Some people they really want it to be my voice.
Yeah, I
Uh,
love when an author reads their own books.
yeah, especially if it's nonfiction, because it really is my voice in the
Yeah,
writing. But you can purchase the book anywhere. It's called I See You, anywhere where you can purchase books, basically Amazon, Barnes and Noble, all of the book resources, and they're all on my website as well. So I would invite you. That's a really easy front door to the work I do, the Habit Finder and the book. Just fun way for you to kind of explore a little bit more of what we've been talking about today.
amazing. Well, thank you so much, Amy. I look forward to downloading it myself and seeing what my habits are and see where I could always improve. And that's another episode, everyone, of the Attract and Stand Out podcast. Thank you so much, Amy, for being here. If you enjoyed the episode, please hit follow and subscribe and leave a review. The more people that hear about the podcast, the more lives we can impact. As always, remember, I believe in you. You're allowed to stand out. You're allowed to shine. You're allowed to be you. We'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.